Hey guys, welcome to Studio 45 Online. Thanks for joining us. We're so glad that you're here. We are going to start out by playing a fun game today, and this is called Four Corners. So I'm going to show you guys 4 different colors on the screen, and it's going to cycle through. It's going to land on one color at the end, but your job during the cycling is to decide which one it is going to land on. So it might be the blue one, the green one, the pink one, or the yellow one, but you have to guess. Now, if you get it right, you get a point. So play along with your family and see how many you can get right and who gets the most right. Let's see our first one. All right, let's go ahead and see our second one. Okay, this is the last one. It might be the tiebreaker depending on how many you guys got each at home, but let's see what this last one is. All right, well, we hope you guys had fun playing that at home. We're getting ready for our Bible story, so sit back and relax and enjoy this Bible story out of 2 Chronicles chapter 10.
The Bible is more than a single book. It's a collection of 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry written by dozens of different authors over thousands of years that all come together to tell one big story. It's a bigger story than you can even imagine. It's a big story about a really big God and what He did to rescue us. It shows us who we are and what we were created to do. Discover the story that shows you the character of God.
Hey everybody, I'm so glad you could join us online for Studio 45's story for today. Our story comes out of the book of 2 Chronicles chapter 10. If you want to turn there, you can go ahead and get ready to read this story all about wisdom for yourself. This month, our big idea is wisdom. It's finding out what you should do and doing it. Now, before we get to our story, I want to read you one verse out of the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 13:20 says this. It says, "Walk with wise people and become wise. A companion of foolish people suffers harm." I love this verse. In fact, early on with my kids, I try to teach them this verse. Walk with wise people and become wise, but a companion of foolish people suffers harm. You know who wrote that? Solomon. Now, we talked about Solomon a couple weeks ago. He was one of the wisest men to ever live, and part of the reason he was so wise is because he asked God for wisdom. In fact, that was the reason why he was so wise. God gave him wisdom. And he wrote this down in the book of Proverbs. Walk with wise people and become wise. A companion of foolish peoples suffers harm. Now, we might think, yeah, that sounds wise. I want to be around wise people. But how do we do that today? And the truth is, what does it mean by a companion of foolish people? Is it possible that we might suffer harm because we're not around the people that are helping us make wise choices? Our story in 2 Chronicles 10 is going to help us see and understand that. But before we get to it, let's just talk about you and me today in 2021. How do we know how to make the wise choice? The truth is, you get a lot of advice during the week, don't you? I mean, think about all the different things, all the different voices, all the different messages you hear on any given day. Like, for instance, maybe you hear the voice of your parents, your teachers, your guardians, and they say things like, do your homework, right? Or eat your vegetables, or all the stuff that you know you should be doing, you think about doing, you want to do, but you're not quite sure if you're going to have time to do it, all that stuff, right? Well, then think about the other voices you might hear. The stuff you see on TV, or the stuff you hear on the radio, or the billboards you see, or the posters you see when you go to a store. All those voices say, buy this. If you have this, you'll be cool. If you look like this, people will like you. If you have these kinds of shoes, that would be awesome, right? Or maybe you're thinking about the voices you hear online. Subscribe to my channel. Follow my Instagram. Check me out on Facebook. There's all kinds of voices that we hear and all kinds of messages we hear online. Or how about the voices from your friends, right? Your friends at school say, hey, you should hang out. Or, hey, have you seen this movie yet? Or, you know what we should do? We should do this during recess. There's all kinds of voices. And the other thing in our culture is there's also a lot of angry voices. There's a lot of people that say, hey, you should be upset. And what about this? And I'm worried, and I'm angry, and I'm exhausted, and I'm mad, and all kinds of different voices. It can be so hard to know what the wise thing to do is. There's so many voices in our world. So how do we know if the voices that we listen to will cause us to suffer harm, like Proverbs 13:20 says, or help us to become wise? Now, in 2 Chronicles chapter 10, what's really interesting is we meet Rehoboam. Rehoboam was Solomon's son. Remember how I told you Solomon was the king? He asked God for wisdom. He was one of the wisest men to ever live. Let's pretend that we could give Rehoboam a call. If we could call Rehoboam today and ask him how he's doing, what he's thinking about, if we could hear his voice, what story would he have to tell us? Hey, why don't you say hi, Rehoboam? Now, playing Rehoboam, go ahead and wave for us. Playing Rehoboam on the phone is none other than my son, August. Now, August is going to play Rehoboam. Rehoboam is, well, he's being played by my son, but Rehoboam actually was Solomon's son. He was raised by one of the wisest men to ever live. I don't know if that's true for you, August. Sorry, buddy. But it was true for Rehoboam. Rehoboam had one of the wisest men to ever live as his dad. He probably heard a lot. Walk with wise people and become wise. But a companion of fools suffers harm. But when Solomon was older and Rehoboam was an adult, Solomon died. And Rehoboam was about to become king. But Rehoboam gets approached by a man named Jeroboam. And Jeroboam asks you, Rehoboam, he says, hey, we want to know what it's going to be like with you as our king. In fact, Jeroboam and the other Israelites said this, your father put a heavy load on our shoulders, but now make our hard work easier. Make the heavy load on us lighter, then we'll serve you. Now, Rehoboam, I want you to look at the camera and think really, really hard. Yep, you're thinking, what should you do? I've never been king before. How should I serve? So Rehoboam decides to give some people a call. Now, the first people he calls are some older people, okay? In fact, we're going to use Miss Sarah, my wife, who's behind the camera. But for Rehoboam, these were the advisors that had helped his dad make some of the wisest decisions that he had made. So, Sarah, how you doing?
Doing good.
You look a lot older than you are. She's very young, but she's playing our old advisors. Now, Rehoboam, you ask the advisors, what should you do? And what did the advisors say, Sarah?
Well, I think they said something like you should do kind of what your father did. And if you're kind to them, they'll treat you kindly back. Something like
exactly. So think about it, right? Rehoboam calls up the old people. He doesn't really get their hairdo. He doesn't really get the music they listen to. He doesn't really agree with all their fashion choices. But they tell him, listen, we know that your dad was kind of hard on the Israelites, but you should be kind to the people. In fact, they tell him, if you are kind to them, give them what they're asking for, they will always serve you. So, Rehoboam, you hang up on the old guys. And you think about this. The issue with being kind to these people, like you're supposed to be, like the advisors told you to, is it sort of made you feel, well, I don't know this for a fact, but I think it made Rehoboam feel weak or like a little baby. You know, he didn't want to feel like a little baby king. He wanted to be a big, tough king, right? Now, let's think about this. Rehoboam has a choice to make. Should he listen to the advice he's got, or should he listen to some other voices in his life? And this is where Rehoboam decides to make another phone call. Are you ready? Hey, King Rehoboam, you need to make another phone call, this time to your best friends. Now, these guys were not people that had served with his dad. These guys were not people that had to make tough decisions before. These were his friends. Now, he probably had a lot more in common with them. He probably dressed like them. He probably liked their style of music. Sarah, you look great. He probably thought they were pretty cool. But this is what they had to say. Sarah, what did the friends of Rehoboam say?
They said that he should just treat them badly, treat all the people badly, make them work harder and be harder or tougher than even Solomon.
Now, Rehoboam hangs up on his friends. In fact, what they told him, they said, you should tell the people, my pinky is as big as my father's leg. I am tough. Rehoboam, you wanted to look really tough. So you thought about this decision and you said, hey, if I do this, it's like I'm flexing my muscles. I'm a big, tough king. You better listen to me. Well, the time comes for Jeroboam. Remember, that was the guy that originally asked, hey, what kind of king are you going to be? And the other Israelites come back to Rehoboam. And in 2 Chronicles 10, you can hear what voice Rehoboam decides to listen to. Is he going to walk with wise people and become wise? Or is he going to be a companion of foolish people and suffer for it? Well, the Bible tells us that he says exactly what his friend said. He said, you think my dad's tough? My little pinky is as big as his leg. He might have used whips. I'm going to use scorpions. This was a really mean answer. And Jeroboam and the Israelites said, hey, guess what? We don't have to listen to that. Rehoboam, I need you to look sad. Because unfortunately, Jeroboam decided, I'm just going to take the kingdom. And Jeroboam and the Israelites decided they didn't want to follow Rehoboam. They stole Rehoboam's kingdom. Jeroboam became the king. And unfortunately, that's the last we hear of Rehoboam. Thanks, Rehoboam. Go ahead and give us a bow, buddy. Good job. Now, what does that story have to do with you and what does it have to do with me? Well, the truth is, if we want to walk with wise people, if we want to become wise, and if we want to avoid harm, we need to listen to the voices that we're listening to. Now, remember how I said the older advisors that he had called probably weren't the most popular with Rehoboam. They probably didn't totally get his style of music or his style of clothing, or they weren't super popular. And I get that, right? I mean, on the one hand, you have the old advisors, and on the other hand, you have Rehoboam's best friends. For you, though, the truth is you have wise choices you can listen to or unwise choices. You have wise voices or unwise voices, and it's kind of like the music we had underneath the phone call. There are some things that might not sound as cool, but they're probably very wise. What Rehoboam failed to do was Rehoboam failed to turn up the wise voices in his life. Now for you, you have a choice. You can turn up the wise voices in your life and listen to what God's word says. Listen to your mom or your dad, even if the opinion's not popular. Listen to the people in your life that value their relationship with Jesus, that trust God no matter what. Treat others the way they want to be treated and value making the wise choice. Or you can turn up the voices in your life that maybe like to laugh at jokes that aren't really that funny, or maybe they make other people feel bad. They like to talk bad about others. Maybe you are listening to the voices in your life that talk about watching things that you really shouldn't be watching, that aren't going to help you make wise choices. The truth is, we live in a culture where both of these voices can be talking to us, and it can be really confusing. So, if we want to make the wise choices, we need to figure out a way to turn up the right voices. So, if you want to be wise, hang out with wise people. If you want to be wise, hang out with wise people. They will help you navigate what choices you should make. Now, I'd like to end with this. In the book of James, it's our memory verse for this month, James says this. He simply says, if any of you needs wisdom, you should ask God for it. He'll give it to you. God gives freely to everyone and doesn't find fault. James 1:5. Now, practically, this might mean that more than being on a phone, you should be in God's word, right? Or maybe for you, this is why when your mom or dad set up screen time on an iPad at the house or on a phone, you could get upset, or you could realize that your parents are trying to turn down the volume of some voices that might not be helping you and turn up the volume on the voices that will. Did you know Mr. Jesse, who's even a dad, has screen time on my phone? I'm a boss. I can make the rules, but I decide that I want to set limits because I want to turn down the voices I don't want to listen to. And I want to turn up the voices I do listen to. Do you know what one app on my phone doesn't have any restrictions on it? My Bible app. I can listen to that and read that as much as I want because that is going to help me make the wise choice. And so I choose to turn the volume on that voice up in my life. And you have the same choice. So let me pray for you, and then we'll let you go. Father God, I pray for every kid watching and every parent watching. Help us to know what the wise voices are that we should listen to. Help us to ask each other, who are the wise people God has put in our life? And help us to ask you for wisdom when we need it. We love you very much, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
That was a great story about how we can turn on different voices in our life to listen and help us make the wise choice. But right now, I want to reveal the question for this weekend. The question for this weekend is, who is the wisest person you know? And I know for me, I have parents and grandparents that have been those wise voices in my life, but think about it for you. Who is the wise person in your life? Maybe it's a teacher or a friend or a parent. Talk about it with who you're watching with, and you can even let us know on social media who is the wisest person you know. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next weekend.